Ooh, a spicy question. I
because
love
the
it.
writing is sort of everything, right? Like you kind of can fix plot holes, but if the writing isn't
So some
there,
readers love that, and some readers are like, but I wanted more of this. So it's kind of a gamble.
Hello and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. On today's episode, I am joined by psychological thriller and domestic suspense author Kathryn Sharman. Hello.
Hi, Jamie.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
It is my absolute pleasure. Let's start, as we always do, by jumping right in with your new book, The Second Home, which is coming out on the 28th of May. Tell us a little bit about it.
Right, okay. The Second Home is another psychological thriller, domestic suspense, as you suggested. And this time I've sort of taken it away from the suburban setting, which was where my debut, The Family Number 23, was based. And this time we're sort of gone on holiday. We're down on the south coast of England during a really hot week in August. And it's essentially about two women again, at very different ages and stages of their lives, dealing with different issues. But they come together into each other's lives quite briefly during this 1 week on holiday. So the first character is Lottie. She's a younger mum with a toddler who's sort of saved up all year for this much longed for holiday. And as soon as they arrive to their rental apartment, they realise that it's right next door to a really noisy, dirty, disruptive, and actually quite dangerous, as it turns out, renovation project. And she's not too happy about it. She's quite a hot-tempered, strident personality anyway, the sort of person who likes to stand up for herself and others, who believes in kind of campaigning and protesting for what she believes is right. So she has some very sort of strong views about this and how it's probably affecting the local community as well. And the other character is Olivia, slightly older, with sort of teenage children who are growing up and sort of flying the nest. And she's down on holiday, down from London with her family, visiting the progress of their renovation project. And she's got other issues. She's kind of in a long, stifling marriage, feels quite frustrated. She's married to the very bullying, bombastic Tobias, who thinks that he's right about everything, who isn't really interested in how his plans are affecting the local community at all. And so obviously you've got this kind of collision between these two families, these two different women. And yeah, essentially it's sort of a week in the sun with tempers fraying and temperatures rising. And it culminates on the Saturday night with a local firework display when a house fire breaks out. We don't know which one. So we don't know whose property it is at first. And essentially two bodies are pulled from the blaze. And that's when things take a really darker, sinister turn, because we don't know whether it's an accident or whether foul play has been involved. So that's essentially it.
Okay, wow. Okay, it sounds great. So it's very much focused on these two characters and the kind of the clash that will inevitably happen between them.
Yeah, exactly. I quite like playing with that, really. The sort of first book was a bit of a two-hander too, sort of flipping between these two different points of view of two women who ostensibly seem very different, with very different outlooks, but they've both got their sort of own issues going on, and they start to realise that, not everything is as straightforward, and you can't just kind of judge a book by its cover, and it's not as binary and straightforward as, the rich are bad and the poor are always right. And it's a much more kind of dubious sort of moral landscape, really, that they're both occupying. And that's kind of what I like to explore in my novels, really. It's what I like to get my teeth into. Although this book, The Second Home, actually is written from 4 different points of view, which was a bit of a departure for me. So I decided to do the 2 women's points of view as well as the 2 men. So you've got Tobias, which is Olivia's husband, but then also got Marcus, who is an architect who is working on the renovation project as well. And he has a little bit of a dark past that comes into play. He has a bit more of a connection to the family than we first realised. So lots of, secrets and lies and buried grief and all of those interesting things that I like to get into. Lots to uncover, lots of deceit, lots of intrigue, which is what I love to write about.
Yeah. And this one, the first one, Family at Number 23, like you said, that was a more of a suburban setting. This one, you're taking the characters on holiday. Is this inspired by a holiday that you had taken, or is this just all imagination?
No, it is actually. And I have to say, there's always usually a bit of a starting point for me when it has come to certainly the last 3 books that I've tried to write. Just that kind of jumping off point, which has just made me stop and think, ooh, that's interesting. So with the Family at Number 23, it was a case of we were in the throes of trying to sell our house, move house, trying to get one of our kids who needed to get into secondary school, was moving from primary to secondary school. So it was all quite difficult, long drawn out, tricky house sale, worried about catchment areas and all that kind of thing. And then one day I was walking home and came across a house that looked really kind of run down and dilapidated, but obviously someone was still living there. And those 2 ideas kind of coalesced in my head. And I thought, I wonder what would happen if someone sort of decided to take a property that would help them get their child into the right school. And similarly with the second home, about 5 years ago, we were on holiday ourselves, and we did a similar thing. We kind of pitched up to our rental place, and everything was fine. It was beautiful. It was great. We were having a lovely holiday. But then about halfway through, we sort of woke up one morning to all of this sort of banging and vibrating and the sound of power tools and everything. And we suddenly realised that there was quite a lot of building work going on next door. We couldn't open any windows. We couldn't really spend much time in the garden because we were right next to a building site. And luckily, it was all fine. We just had a quick word with them next door to find out what was going on. And, they were really nice and sort of agreed to try and keep the work to a minimum. And we left a couple of days later, and it didn't make any vast difference to our holiday. But there was this moment where coming back, like having had that conversation with the builders and the owners on site, and coming back to our rental, I remember just sort of sitting there thinking, imagine if it was a different scenario where you were stuck here for the whole week and everything just got really feisty and everybody, was just getting really angry and upset with each other. And it was hot and, you were worried and anxious and, you weren't getting any sleep because you had like a fractious toddler and, next door were just being really horrible and difficult and nasty about it all. And everyone was just really locking horns. What would someone be capable of? How could that situation sort of really escalate? And, you just sort of follow that thread as far as you can see it and seeing, what might be possible. And I didn't do anything about that idea for a very long time. I sort of went away and wrote other things, wrote The Family at Number 23, obviously. And then when it came to pitching a second idea to my publishers, Hodder, because it was a 2-book deal, and they had obviously gone on submission with the first book, and they really liked that, but they wanted to know if I had anything else, any other ideas for what would be the book 2. And that's when I just thought, there's an idea that was there, and I still keep coming back to it because I knew it would be an opportunity to talk about a few quite prevalent issues, that are still affecting a lot of areas in the country, like Devon and Cornwall, or even the Lake District, where, the local community are being affected by a lot of house buying and development, and how tourism and trade is changing, and how local homeowners and businesses are being forced out. And, I just thought that could be a really meaty issue to get my teeth into. So I just worked it up as a bit of more of a kind of idea, just a brief synopsis, really. And then when it came to writing book 2, I just thought, oh gosh, I hope I can make this one work. But I just, when you kind of pitch an idea and then you've actually got to do it. Yeah. But luckily it was all there. I just remember like looking through a few of those old holiday snaps from 5 years ago, just reacquainting myself with that landscape and that feeling of being on holiday, and then just trying to remember what it was like being next to this renovation and the sorts of characters that would, be really good to kind of pit against each other. What sort of people would be particularly adversarial in that scenario? And I have to say, a lot of people complain about book 2 and say that it's like really hard, like it becomes the difficult second album. And I was really worried about that too. So I sort of got cracking on it as soon as possible. I tried to write a first draft before my debut came out, just to try and get ahead of myself. And this one just really, really flowed. And it just, I hate to say it, just really seemed to kind of not write itself, but fall into place quite easily. I have to say, book 3 is not behaving as well. It's turning into the difficult third album, and I really, really wish it was coming out as smoothly as this second book. But what can you say? You know, every book I'm learning is different. Every writing process is different, and some of the tricky ones they say do turn out to be the best ones. So I'm really hoping that's going to be the case with this one.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the trick here was that this idea sort of predated your debut novel, and this kind of idea has just been percolating in the back of your head for a long time now. So I guess that seems to have really helped with the, as you say, the difficult second novel.
Yeah, I think so. And you can't always pick and choose it like that. But yet it had been simmering away for quite a long time. And I hadn't really been thinking about it closely or mapping it out. But I suppose it was always there as an idea. And obviously it's you know, not autobiographical in any way. And, you know, the events of the story don't mimic real events at all. But there was just enough of a kernel of truth there, just enough of a kind of real life experience to build on that gave me that sort of sure footing to get started. I think if you can just put yourself in that scenario just a little bit and you can imagine, you know, the landscape and the setting, it doesn't take much to then start building up your characters and your hook and start to think about a few plot points and you're away. You know, I mean, I don't plan and plot everything out. I'm very much a kind of discovery writer or pantser. As long as I've got that opening idea and an idea of what the main premise could be, what the main kind of hook is, I can usually start going from there. And that was certainly the case with this one. It just all sort of developed. And I think it helped that I was writing it through those long, dark autumn, winter months as well. So although it might have been difficult to imagine myself on holiday, it was quite a nice escape to imagine myself being down by the seaside on a really hot August week, you know, just enjoying the sea and the sun. But it was a nice escape at the time.
Yeah, I mean, sounds good. It sounds like it all worked out for the second one. The going back to your debut, I guess if we could go back a bit further than that, your debut, The Family at Number 23, came out last year, 2025. Had you been writing long before you wrote The Family at Number 23?
Yes, it was quite a long, convoluted route, I have to say. So, I mean, I've been a journalist, copywriter, done lots of communications. Writing has always been the common theme throughout all of my career. And then I would say not long after I turned 40, and so talking about 2017, I think I finally made a decision to do an MA in creative writing, which was just something I'd been thinking about for a long time. And the timing felt right. You know, my kids were old enough that I wasn't quite so involved with them. You know, they were all at school. I just had a bit more free time to fit around my freelance writing work. And it felt like a good opportunity to just, I don't know, you don't need to do an MA in creative writing, as everyone I'm sure is aware. But for me, it was a bit more of a declaration to myself and my family and other people in my life that, you know, I am doing this. I'm taking my writing seriously. I'm carving out this time. And I did it part-time over 2 years. So I could give myself plenty of time to really develop as a writer. And that was great. Did develop a novel as part of my dissertation. That was something that I sort of tinkered with and kept coming back to as an idea and as a manuscript over a number of years. Did write a few other things that didn't, you know, managed to get another full-length novel out, but didn't really do much with it. And then we were sort of obviously in the whole COVID lockdown situation. And I kept coming back to this original manuscript, which I really liked and felt like it had something. And that's when I decided I would do a Curtis Brown Creative Online course because, again, we were sort of all stuck at home during lockdown and I felt like I needed something to really just kickstart my creative mojo a little bit again and get me back into writing, but also getting some more feedback. So I did that for 3 months and that really helped. I totally re-edited the manuscript. And yeah, that was the book that I sent out to the Bath Novel Award. And I hadn't really thought about it too much. I mean, I've been aware of that award for a number of years and I knew it had a great reputation, but I just kind of like fired it off in the closing hours of the last day before the deadline because at the time I just didn't really think there was much chance. And this is how ridiculous it is because that novel actually did get longlisted and then shortlisted, and it did actually get me introduced to my agent, who I eventually signed with, which was great, because obviously that sort of changes everything, and you finally got someone sort of on your side helping you. And we worked together on that novel for the best part of another year, actually, because my agent, she used to work as an editor in a lot of the top publishing houses like Penguin, so she's got real editing chops, and she didn't want to send it out until she felt it was really ready. So we sent it out, and there was one editor who really loved it, wanted to take it to acquisitions, and I think you know where this is going. We obviously got quite excited. Well, I did anyway, because you sort of think, oh, great, acquisitions are sort of home and dry now. And that was just before Christmas. And then in January, we heard back that unfortunately, whilst she still really loved it and was really passionate about it as an idea, she couldn't manage to persuade the rest of the team to take it on. So that was really gutting, because we'd worked on it for quite a long time. And as I say, it had been originally a book that I'd been tinkering with for years. So it felt like it had had a lot of time and effort invested in it. But luckily, in between times, I had actually come up with the idea for my debut, which was, what turned out to be The Family at number 23. And it was that thing where I was just walking down the road and I saw this old dilapidated, mysterious house, and it just became this really inspiring jumping off point. And so I just started writing it almost for myself as a bit of a distraction from the whole submitting process with the other novel, to just keep writing, really. And the more I wrote it, the more I realized that it was, gathering a pace itself, that I was really enjoying it, that it seemed to be just a bit more pacey. And I'd shown my agent, Kate, the first 20,000 words of this, saying that, this is the next project I'm writing on, let me know what you think. And she loved it. I think she could tell almost immediately that it was much more commercial. It had much more of an obvious hook that she could sell. It was less sort of book clubby and more just straight down the line psychological thriller. So it had a very definite niche, a very definite market. And so when we found out that the other book had failed on submission, I just thought, well, I've got nothing else to lose. I'm just going to throw myself into writing this other thing. I wrote it quite fast, so it had quite a lot of pace and momentum. I realised that I could just sort of I suppose just get out of my own way and stop worrying about trying to write the perfect novel, and just really enjoy the process and really kind of get into kind of those twists and turns and writing shorter, more pacier chapters. And everything just sort of seemed to fall into place with that novel. I think it was maybe just a fruition of a lot of the stuff that I'd learned along the way, a lot of the mistakes I'd made along the way, but finally sort of working out, the right hook with the right idea at the right time. And things just fell into place. And when we went on submission with that, not long afterwards, it didn't take long at all to kind of get that one edited into shape. And we literally went out on submission the following summer. So probably about 6 months after the other novel had failed on submission, it was picked up by Hodder and Stoughton, and it was great. Finally, but that whole process took nearly 10 years. Yeah. We're talking sort of maybe, 2017, 18 when I did the MA. And so it's been quite a long and winding road. Certainly not like an easy one, that's for sure. But these things take time sometimes, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. When number 23 did go out on submission, was it like, it sounds like it was a pretty quick time submission before the editors got in touch and said that they wanted, they were interested in this?
Yeah. I think it was about 6 weeks, maybe. Okay. Slightly less than that. So we weren't waiting too long, and it was summer. So I was sort of trying to be distracted a little bit by stuff going on, going away, going on holiday a little bit, trying not to bite the fingernails too much. But it was still, even 6 weeks is quite nerve-wracking because of the previous experience, sort of being on submission before and then just slowly but surely getting these no's, and then this final yes, which seemed to be the one that then also turned into a no. It was like, I don't know if my nerves can cope with this. So I was quite nervous about going on submission again. And I didn't have anything else in the hopper in terms of other projects coming through. It was a kind of now or never situation. It felt like, this is the one, this is the book. We both felt really strongly about it, I think, and really, really hopeful. But in the end, it does only take one editor who's looking for the right type of thing at the right time. And my editor at Hodder basically said that she'd been waiting all year to get like a very specific sort of property themed, real estate themed kind of psychological thriller along the lines of the sort of thing that, say, Louise Candlish would write, and a little bit sort of Lisa Jewell-ish in vibe. And that was the sort of thing she was looking for to try and complete her list. And I do genuinely think it is a lot to do with luck and timing and, the right manuscript landing on the desk of the right person before they've signed it with someone else, before they've decided to go somewhere else with something else. It's worrying, I know, to think of it like that in terms of it being so luck oriented. But I suppose it's a case of if you just keep putting yourself out there long enough and you just keep trying, eventually it isn't about luck. It's just about, creating opportunities for yourself, and it will land eventually with the right person at the right time. So
that's it. Yeah, I mean, and you created that opportunity when, you went out on sub 6 months, you said, like, after the previous one had died. I wonder, now that I know that there's a happy ending, I wonder if I could ask you when that first book died on submission, what was the discussion like with Kate when the two of you kind of agreed, like, we're putting this to one side and we need to work on something else?
Yeah, I think that was an interesting one because obviously it was really disappointing, and it was January. It was like the grimmest, longest month. There was nothing much to look forward to. Yeah, the weather was rubbish, and it was like the worst news at the worst possible time in the first couple of weeks after Christmas. And I was like, oh, right, really going to have to pick myself up. And we'd had a conversation about, whether to go back and do some more edits on it, whether we could change the focus or the angle of it a little bit. Which was a possibility. I mean, Kate wasn't the sort of person to just sort of give up easily. It wasn't like she was just sort of trashing the thing immediately. And at one point, because we'd already put together, Kate had put together an initial list of publishers that we went out on submission to, about maybe 6, that were more traditional. And then she said, okay, well, what we could do is go again with another list of, say, about 6 or 8 slightly smaller, non-traditional quirky little publishers who might just be interested in doing something a bit different. And I was like, okay, yeah, I don't want to give up on this manuscript immediately. It's, I've put so much effort into it, so much time. We've worked on it for so long. I felt really tied to it and really invested in it, which isn't necessarily the best thing in order to make the right decisions, because you're looking at it from your heart rather than your head. And Kate went away and said, no worries, I totally understand how you feel. I'll start putting together a list of some other slightly smaller, more interesting, maybe independent publishers that could be up for this. And then she came back a week later and she was just really honest and transparent, which I love about her. Very cards on the table. And, it's why I wanted to go with a really experienced editor / agent, because she knows the industry and she knows how it works. And she said, look, I've been procrastinating a little bit about putting together this second list. And the reason I usually procrastinate is because my gut's telling me something. And my gut is telling me that this story just isn't right for this, for the time, for the market. It's going to be a difficult sell. It doesn't really fit neatly into a particular genre. It's a little bit literary. It's a little bit historical. It's a little bit book club. And the sort of feedback we'd been getting from some of the other editors at publishers had sort of said the same thing. That they loved the writing, they loved the characterization. There were some really interesting, powerful themes, but they weren't quite sure how to sell it or how it would neatly fit in. And so Kate said to me, I think we need to be brave, and I think we need to just set this to one side or just admit that it's, not the right timing for this. And she said, I really think you need to go with this new manuscript that you've been writing. This is the one. And it took me about a day or so to sort of get over the grief of that, almost like mourning the loss finally of knowing that that manuscript that I'd worked so long and hard on for so many years was definitely dead. Dead in the water for now anyway. Yeah. I don't know whether there were aspects of it that could eventually be brought back to life at some point. It would have to be in a very different way to sort of fit into the kind of writing and the sort of genre and market that I'm writing for now. But yeah, I had to really kind of just let it go. And then after about 24 hours of just feeling really sad about it, it felt quite euphoric. Like, you know, when you finally let go of something that was dragging you down and worrying you, and a problem that you couldn't really figure out how to solve. And then you finally let it go and you suddenly feel lighter and freer. And it was just kind of what I needed, really, to just throw myself into the other manuscript and enjoy the writing process again. And yeah, it was a hard one, but it was the right decision. And I'm really glad Kate was quite honest and tough with me about it, or certainly sort of gave me the benefit of her advice. Ultimately, the decision was mine. I'm sure she would have had another round of submissions with it if I'd really pushed for it. But I felt like I needed to trust her instincts, trust her experience. And I remember her saying, "Thank you so much for trusting me, because I do think this is the right thing." And lo and behold, you know, she was right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you'd gone out again and it's still not found a home, I think it would have been even more difficult to kind of move on from that.
Yeah, exactly. And we would have got dispirited and it would have wasted even more time. And sometimes you just have to know when to cut your losses and move on to the next thing. And I think that was one of the most valuable lessons I've learned so far in this whole process is don't get really hung up on a project if it isn't working. Don't get too personally tied to things. You just, you know, they're just manuscripts, they're just books, just move on to the next project. If you really want to be a long-term writer or have a career as a writer in any way, shape or form, then you will always be expected to come up with new ideas. You will sometimes have to ditch manuscripts, radically change them, abandon them, and then come up with new ideas almost on a year or two basis, you know, and you're only as good as the next book and the next idea. So you just can't get too bogged down on that one thing. You know, you just have to keep looking forward and coming up with new ideas. And yeah, that was a good lesson learned.
Yes, to be able to kill one's darlings, as they say.
Exactly. Yeah.
We're at the point now where I ask you, Kathryn, if you were snowed in at a cozy woodland cabin in the middle of nowhere, which book would you hope to have with you?
Okay. Well, obviously, it's going to be quite a nice sort of cozy atmosphere, like you say. There's probably snow outside, possibly even wintry. And I love that because it's the perfect environment for just holing up and reading. You don't feel any pressure to be outside doing things. Well, I certainly wouldn't if it was cold and snowy outside.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's a funny old thing. I still really love historical fiction. I did try writing it at one point with disastrous results, but I've always loved reading it. And for some reason, I always turn to more kind of historical fiction when it's cold outside or dark or, you know, wintry in some way, and I just want to cozy up. So I would say one of my all-time favourite writers is Hilary Mantel, and my favourite of her books is essentially the Wolf Hall trilogy. I don't think I'd be allowed to take all three unless we just sellotaped them together, in which case it would be a massive, massive tome. I don't know which one of the three to pick. Obviously, the third one in the trilogy, The Mirror and the Light, is the heftiest. So that would definitely give me the most reading matter to go with. But, you know, the first book is amazing, the way it sets up the characters. I just love her writing. I find it... I mean, obviously, it's just, you know, the integrity, the historical detail and research that has gone into it is all there. So you are completely and utterly immersed in that world. But her characterization is amazing. I love that historical period. I found the whole kind of politics and the machinations of that world endlessly fascinating. I think we are fascinated with characters like Henry VIII.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think it would be meaty and hefty enough, but also there's something still really modern about her writing, the way she has written those books in the first person present tense. Third person present tense is how I write mine, third person present tense, and it makes everything seem so much more immediate, like you're there in the moment experiencing it with the characters. And I think reading and enjoying those books, even though they were set in a completely different historical time period, really kind of they were really inspirational for me when it came to kind of developing my own writing style and my own voice, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
So like I say, I started writing third person present tense, and that's how I've written all of my stuff since. And I should probably stretch myself and try some other techniques. Actually, in this new book I'm trying to write for book 3, it is written in third person present tense from a couple of points of view, but then there are some little kind of intervening snippets which are written in a first person. So I am trying new things. We'll see how that goes. Maybe that's why it's stalling, because I'm just doing stuff I'm not good at. But yeah, any of those 3 books from the Wolf Hall trilogy by Hilary Mantel, I still can't believe she's gone. I loved her. I do love her. She's brilliant. And her books are just an amazing, lasting legacy for anyone who loves historical fiction or is a writer themselves. There's so much to get out of them. So I would sit back and cozy up and just immerse myself in that world.
Yeah. I mean, Hilary Mantel was a legendary writer, and Wolf Hall is, I imagine that's her most famous novels that she put out there. And there was a recent adaptation, I think people said was really good. I haven't seen it, with Damian Lewis.
Yeah. So they adapted the first 2 books, Wolf Hall and Bring Up the Bodies, and they made a really good TV adaptation of that. And then obviously there was quite a long gap, not surprisingly, several years. I don't know, was it about 7 or 8, when she was writing the 3rd book, The Mirror and the Light, which is the biggest one of all 3. It's massive. It's about, I'm gonna guess at like 900 pages or something like that. It's pretty wodgy. And then they finally made that into an adaptation that sort of finished off that whole series with the same actors playing those 2 main parts. It was brilliant. Really well done. I loved it.
Okay, good. I'm glad, because it's always a worry for fans of books when the book is adapted, and you never know how it's going to go. You never know if it's going to, if you have to go around telling people not to watch it or something.
I know. You do kind of watch with bated breath a little bit, don't you? Don't ruin it. But the actors and the script and everything about it was just fantastic. It was really well done.
Yes. Awesome. Well, Wolf Hall, a great addition to the Woodland Cabin Library. Next up, we are going to get a bit more into the writing process and the craft of writing. That will all be in the extended episode at patreon.com/write and roll. Yeah, I think so.
I'm proof of that, because there were plenty of opportunities where I could have given up along the way. It certainly wasn't an overnight success situation for me, that's for sure.
Yes, yeah. It takes many years to become an overnight success.
Exactly.
That's a great sentiment and some great advice to end the episode on. Thank you so much, Kathryn, for coming on the podcast and chatting with me, telling us all about your new book, The Second Home, and your first book, and the kind of journey that you've taken through with your writing and through the publishing industry. It's been really cool chatting with you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it as well.
And for everyone listening, The Second Home is out on the 28th of May in all the usual places. If you want to keep up with what Kathryn is doing, you can find her on Instagram at Kathryn.Sharman and on her Substack, This Writing Life. To support this podcast, like, follow and subscribe, join the Patreon for ad-free extended episodes, and check out my other podcast, The Chosen Ones and Other Tropes. Thanks again, Kathryn, and thanks to everyone listening. We will catch you on the next episode.